There's over 40 things that can impact your blood sugar at any moment. So with that, you also talked a little bit about, and it's something I love talking about, just the importance of muscle mass as people with diabetes and what that does for us. I'd love if you could speak a little to that so people don't think I'm just a broken record and they can get it from the actual research man himself.
Yeah, well, I think...
Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode. Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where I have an amazing guest that you should know if you don't already know him. And he is a master in the exercise and diabetes space and doing lots of amazing research on it. Welcome, Alex. What's going on?
Thanks for having me, Ben. It's been good to be here. Yeah, I think it's great to talk about all things exercise and specifically type 1 diabetes. Yeah.
I was going to say, and I know your research is totally engrossed in that. And I'm just so excited because I feel like it's very rare that I get to nerd out and kind of go into the secret part of my life where a lot of people listening probably don't know. I did half my PhD, everything with my dissertation, and then walked away because I was like, I need to work with people as a dietitian now, but you're doing the amazing work that helps inform the work that we're doing, so I'm very grateful for you. And I would love, just so everyone's acquainted, like, how did you get to this point? How did you say, hey, I'm going to study exercise and type 1? Like, how did that become your jam? How's that your journey?
Well, I guess it started with my undergrad degree. It was in kinesiology at the University of Ottawa. It's sort of, I guess, like, I was always interested in exercise for like all through high school. Like then right at the end, I was like, yeah, definitely want to go into exercise, into kinesiology. And then in the second semester of my first year, I was diagnosed with type 1. So that kind of completely sort of changed like my thoughts on what I wanted to do with my future. So like I kind of just sort of, I took it from there really. Like I kind of like really got into the weeds of how to exercise with type 1. And like back then, it was 2013. So like back then, there wasn't that much information out there. So I really had to do a lot of digging, a lot of searching online to find out how to actually continue exercising. Because I'd been in the gym like for 3 years at that point. I think from there, it got me more interested in helping out others that are on that similar path, because there's not a lot of information and it can be really tough and it can be frustrating. And it's always coming down to trial and error. I think from there, I wanted to like inform all of these guidelines that I was reading about and like that were coming out slowly. So I did my master's in diabetes medicine in Scotland, a small city named Dundee, about an hour north up the coast from Edinburgh. And so there that was mostly barriers to physical activity. So it was an online questionnaire. I got almost 500 people talking about what things that kind of stop them from being regularly active. And then I guess like having that like 2 extra years in academia, wanting to pursue a PhD, and then I guess kind of tried out different supervisors, and like so I met with so many people over the last couple of years, and finally landed one in Montreal, specifically in resistance exercise and type 1 diabetes, which is what I've always wanted to do.
I have so many questions. I'm like, and even before we get into the research side, I got to know, because you were diagnosed in college. And a lot of people were diagnosed, like I was diagnosed at 7. A lot of people were diagnosed a little younger. Just from your perspective, as someone who's very into training at that point in your life, you're blindsided with this new diagnosis. How did it impact you? Like, obviously you became motivated to continue doing this and to help others. But initially, like, what was your thought process? Like, did it impact your training? Did you stop? Did you feel more motivated? Like, what went through your mind?
Well, I guess like in terms of like being blindsided and having like the resources to actually deal with it. Like my dad is also type 1. So like I've been giving him glucagon shots since like 3rd grade and grade 3.
Oh, wow.
So, like I've been kind of like in the know for quite a while. And then my aunt and also my uncle, it's like on my dad's side, we all have type 1. So I think that kind of helped in me realizing that you can live with it. It's not a death sentence or anything. It's manageable. Just having people in your life that have been able to manage it. And I think for me, it was definitely a motivator. It made me dig more into the gym. Like it really, like talking to like my brain and endocrinologist and talking to my family doctor, like them saying like how important exercise is and how important muscle mass is and stuff. Like I was really lucky with my endo actually, because she had an undergrad in physiology. So like that was pretty amazing because like she helped me so much. I got incredibly lucky with that. So like she gave me like the few resources that were out there, and like she kind of like set me on my way and helped me do all the trial and error and helped me problem solve and things. But yeah, I think I definitely took my diagnosis as a motivator, as a reason to continue to be active and continue in all the different sports I wanted to do. Yeah.
Well, and I always ask because sometimes people take it a really difficult way and it takes them a while to kind of get back on track. It doesn't sound like it derailed you at all, fortunately, which I love to hear. And then obviously you were able to do a lot of work really quickly in the academic field. And so I know you mentioned too, the barriers to physical activity. You mentioned that was part of the master side. Walk us through just what were some of those barriers? Because you said you got a lot of people that responded. So I'd imagine you got some really good data. What were some of the most common barriers that people observe? Because as someone listening, they may think, oh my God, I want to exercise, but it's really tough because my number always crashes or on a go high. What did you observe from the, formal research?
So the one that always pops up, and the one that popped up in my own research, was the fear of hypoglycemia. That is really someone being afraid of going low from any sort of exercise that they're doing is definitely at the number one that everyone always reports and everyone always talks about. And like, it was kind of other things of like, I separated them between like barriers related to their diabetes and barriers related to every other aspect of their life. So yes, it was like things are just like your fitness level to begin with. If someone just doesn't make that first step to become a little more active, or a lot of people think they're going to the gym like 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and start doing like 15,000 steps a day or something. Like people, I think it's a lot of sort of the gap in what people think that they need to do. And then I guess like other things like your work schedule or the weather outside, things like that.
And what would you say on the diabetes front? Because the fear of hypos is a big one, but I'd be curious of just what some of the other ones might be. Because again, someone listening might think, hey, maybe I'm not afraid of hypos, but there's something else. I'm just curious if other things pop up, or maybe someone realizes, hey, this actually is why I'm nervous to exercise.
Well, I guess what else was there? There's probably like fear of losing control of your diabetes. It's like someone thinking that adding in another variable into their diabetes management is just going to throw everything out of whack. Like their insulin dosages will go all over the place, or they'll need to eat a lot more carbs to prep for lows, or they feel terrible getting highs if they're going high during exercise, things like that. Yeah, I think a lot of it goes down to diabetes just being so variable to begin with.
Well, and I was going to say, we both know there's over 40 things that can impact your blood sugar at any moment. So with that, though, you also talked a little bit about, and it's something I love talking about, just the importance of muscle mass as people with diabetes and what that does for us. I'd love if you could speak a little to that so people don't think I'm just a broken record and they can get it from the actual research man himself.
Yeah, well, I guess it's not really talked about a lot, like just the benefits of building more muscle mass, because like your muscles are one of the key cells that like bring glucose into your cells, or bring glucose out of your bloodstream into your body to be used to create energy. And a lot of the time, your muscles can do that without even needing insulin. Like there's so many glucose transporters that can work without actually needing insulin. So along with that, it just increases your insulin sensitivity, so you don't need as much. And also going along with the long-term effects of diabetes, like there's a little bit of research now showing that those with type 1 they're losing muscle mass and they're losing bone density faster than those without type 1 diabetes. So focusing on muscle hypertrophy, focusing on building and maintaining muscle mass can definitely help with any sort of accelerated aging effects of type 1.
Well, if you're listening to this and you're not doing any sort of strength work, this is your sign from the universe to start something, because you don't want to be, in your 50s or 60s and having your bone density way lower than the average population and increase your risk of fracture. And Lord knows that can have a ton of ramifications on blood sugar. So what would you say, before we dive into like the fun research you're doing now too, because I know we were talking a little about that before, what would you say someone's never done any strength work in their life? What do they start out with to try to improve their insulin sensitivity and decrease their risk of muscle breakdown and bone density loss?
Well, I guess like the ADA guidelines are really just 2 days of resistance exercise a week. I think that would be something that most people could sort of like fit into their schedule, hopefully. And then given just 2 days, like you would probably want to do like a full body routine, sort of hitting all the large muscle groups, doing maybe like full body. I think I would definitely want to focus on, hitting the large muscles, because those are the ones that are going to be growing the largest, getting the most growth out of it. And if you've never exercised or never gone to the gym before, like you can really build quite a bit of mass in like under a year. Like you can get like the newbie gains in like 6 months. You can build like 20 pounds of muscle or something, for 30 pounds of muscle. It's pretty incredible.
I missed the newbie gains. I wish I still had newbie gains, man. That was so long ago for us.
Yeah.
But, if you don't know newbie gains, it's basically your body is set up to gain muscle faster and more effectively when you're just starting out. So I'm not saying, you only get it one shot and that's it. But if you're listening to this, you've never done any sort of resistance training, just know you're going to see a lot of progress very quickly if you are consistent out of the gate. And like Alex said, 2 days a week, totally fine. But if you're like, hey, I want to challenge myself and do a little something every day at home, nothing crazy, but a little something just to get in a flow. Maybe it's push-ups, maybe it's squats. There's plenty your body itself can do in addition to going into the gym. So now I feel like we got to go into the fun research. The research is the fun part, right? So tell a little bit about what you've been working on over the last few months, because I know you're doing a trial now. It seemed really exciting and I feel like people want to know.
Sure. So now I'm at the University of Montreal in the Jane Yardley lab. I'm also working with the IRCM, that's our Clinical Research Institute in Montreal. We have a diabetes clinic, and we also have like a research gym like right beside our diabetes clinic. So that's where we do most of our research. So we have the gym, and we also have a physiology lab where we do VO2 peak testing. We have a DEX, we have a bod pod. We have research nurses that do all the blood testing there. I do some of the blood testing myself with plasma glucose, using little pipettes and learning more on how to do all the wet lab work. Yeah. So I guess like our work is kind of broken down into like three key research areas. Like we want to develop guidelines, develop information that's like personalized, and like that we're able to sort of give very specific guidelines to different populations of people with type 1 diabetes with type 1. Yeah. So we want to really make all forms of it. We want to make exercise accessible to as wide a population as possible. So like some of the few research studies we have right now, we have one with postmenopausal women. We have one with participants using DIY pumps to see if changing their blood glucose setting is a good idea for around exercise. We just got approved for one where we're giving them like a standardized breakfast and then having them exercise as soon as they get the high glucose alert on their CGM. And so sort of like kind of mimicking forgetting to give yourself a bolus. So seeing if walking for 15 minutes helps with coming down from that high, comparing that to just insulin alone. Walking with insulin and insulin without walking as soon as you get that high alert. And then we also have in the works, we have one with an observational study with pregnant women with type 1 diabetes. And then I guess one that I'm really working on myself is a case study on a trans male bodybuilder with type 1. So we're trying to just sort of follow him along through his transition and seeing how his blood glucose is reacting to his hormone replacement therapy and any of the pharmaceuticals that he's taking.
Holy cow. I have so many questions on so many different pieces too. I'm like, which one do I even start on? I want to know. So if we go for a second on the one about the breakfast, right? Where you're like, hey, we're giving them breakfast. I assume they're not dosing anything.
No, not in the beginning.
No dose. And then at that point they're saying, hey, I'm going to go exercise. Talk about that. And I mean, obviously I don't know how much of the findings you can share thus far, but just as a concept, right? Do a lot of people, do you notice, was this based on the fact that a lot of people will say, oh, I missed my dose, I'm going to go exercise, or my number's high and I'm going to go exercise and see how well it brings it down?
So we just approved the actual data right now. But yeah, the whole idea was sort of to mimic like a real world scenario where someone's just forgotten to give themselves their bolus for the breakfast. And so like, we really want to see if going for a walk along with that delayed insulin can get you down to your target range faster, and just to see if that's a decent guideline to sort of share.
That's good. I was like, we're going to be back here to talk about that because I feel like there's so many people like, oh, can I get away with going for a walk or can I get away with training instead of it? And that's like, it's not something always.
Well, we don't really know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure as heck I've never heard of actual formal data on this. So this will be absolutely fascinating. God, that one's crazy. And then the DIY one, is that one referring to more of like the DIY loop pumps, like the ones where people have the open source themselves?
Yeah. So I think they're mostly open APS pumps it's mostly Omnipod, I think. Most people using Omnipod. And yeah, that one is sort of like changing the exercise target to see if the DIY system can sort of adjust automatically to different blood glucose target values.
So you've got 3 different levels, and in, practice, obviously everybody says, okay, there's different opinions of what target you should set your, blood sugar for when exercising. And I've seen people say, oh, I feel good at 120. I feel good 120 to 180, but y'all are testing the actual like optimal number. It sounds like. That's going to be
like we're tracking their CGM, tracking, do we have to give them extra carbs, tracking like their like an hour before and tracking an hour after just to see all kinds of different effects.
This is going to be so cool, man. No, I didn't do any of this cool stuff. I would have probably stayed if I did all this stuff, man. That's so wild. But no, I feel like that's going to be huge. Cause again, like I know personally, like if I'm between 100 and 150, or I guess if we convert it, right? If I'm between roughly 4.5, 5, well, I guess 5 and change to, 7, 8, I guess 8-ish. I think like 5 to 8 in millimoles. That would be, where I'm like, oh, hey, I feel good about this. But on the flip side, there's so many people that are like, well, what if I can be 90? What if I could be 110? And for lifting, you've probably seen it a million times with your own experience too. But are you all also testing if, the different types of workouts are going to change it? Because lifting, a lot of times people will go up, right? So I'd be curious if that's something you guys have tested for or seen, or just what's going on from your experience.
For that DIY?
Just in general, like for lifting, that makes people go up, at least from what I've seen for a ton of people. They'll, you start out at one number and your number rises a bunch. Have y'all ever done any studies based on that, or has that already been done? I'm sure someone had to have done that.
So there aren't actually that many studies out there. Yeah. And it's sort of like a debate right now in the resistant exercise and type 1 diabetes realm. So that's actually what I want to do my PhD on figuring out if resistant exercise intensity is related to blood glucose changes.
Yo, that's going to be so cool.
It's like right now, like the data is sort of, there's only one fasted resistance exercise study that most people are citing. And like when you are exercising or when you're lifting weights fasted, your blood glucose is going to go up. But if you're lifting weights with any appreciable amount of insulin on board, you could be flat or you could go down.
And that's a huge point that I think people do not talk about. Like I'll say something, okay, traditionally lifting, you stay steady, you might go up. But I also try to say, depending on the nature of the workout, you could drop. And people will not talk about that very often because they always think, well, it has to be up or it has to be flat. And cardio is always down. And I've had cardio where I've gone up 100 points. Or I guess, if I'm flipping, it's 5.5 points, right? Like there's tons of times where there's exceptions to the rule. And I'm really glad that you're going to be testing this because I think it's so important that people don't just fall into, oh, it's this or that. Diabetes is unpredictable. It could be anything.
Yeah. I think a lot of the sort of like traditionally shared knowledge on what direction your blood glucose will go in like any form of exercise is really like, a lot of people forget that it's just a massive range. Like if you've seen like the charts of like Microdel has like the graphics of the different types of exercise and like the blood glucose response is like an arrow pointing up and then also the arrow goes down. So there's a massive range of a triangle. And like that's sort of trying to capture the individual variability. And there's so many, and trying to capture so many different factors that go into a blood glucose response from any type of exercise too. So yeah, like I think that we're applying for another grant actually right now for fasted exercise to look at that more. So that'll probably continue on into the actual like studies that'll be a part of my dissertation. So I want to look at quite high intensity resistance exercise, like probably like 90%, 95%, 1 rep max, and then compare that to lower or like moderate, maybe like 80%, and see if there's any differences in there. Is lower intensity more similar to aerobic, which like if you're doing like 10, 15 reps, your glucose response could be more similar to aerobic exercise. And then I wanted to take that and I wanted to compare that like between 2 age groups and then between 2 fitness level groups, sort of delineated by VO2 peak testing to see if your fitness level is going to dictate your response to resistance exercise.
These are the things, like when I was excited going into PhD school, these are the types of things why. Because this is, I mean, that what you just described right there would pretty much, for people who may or may not be familiar with the research world, like this is stuff where we may think we know it, but it's not formally out there. And you would be making it a formal declaration of, we tested all these different fitness levels. We tested different ages. We tested different, intensities. And here are the results we got for everything. So then it can be actually translated into the population instead of something that we kind of know, we might know, it works a lot of the time, but now it's like, it's been demonstrated that. So this could be landmark. This could be huge, man. I'm excited for you. I'm gonna go back and do this with you. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I think it's just, we just need information on like all different types of populations in the type of community, all different ages and all different stages of their life. If they're like, all different sexes, different genders. I think we need so many more studies to sort of really personalize the guidelines, because it really can go down the person, like when you give you advice. Yeah.
Cool. And do you feel like, like guidelines like the ADA and, other of the national or international types of, recommendations, do you feel like a lot of them, they have to be broad, but that they could be so much better? Because I always felt like they were fine, but they would define, for example, the nutrition field, right? It would be like, a low carb diet, which might mean 30 to 50% of your diet coming from carbs. I'm like, that's not low carb for anyone. So it would drive me nuts. And oh my God. So do you feel like there has to be some sort of improvement with these, international or national, just general recommendations?
Yeah, I think I would agree with you there. Like, I think given the nature of their work, they have to be really broad, because they're working like the population level, and like science communication, knowledge translation could be so difficult to try to reach like a broad enough population. But yeah, as the years go on, hopefully like these guidelines can be more personalized and more down to like individual comorbidities with type 1 diabetes. Even, like our research on pregnant women with type 1, there are no guidelines on pregnant women with type 1 diabetes. There's lots of pregnancy guidelines and exercise, but what does having type 1 diabetes do on top of that? Or postmenopausal women as well. Like there are a decent amount of guidelines for that, but there's quite a gap in most of the populations that we're working with, which I think is that's why I'm doing this. That's why I want to do this, because like there are so many underrepresented people.
So grateful that you are doing this. And I feel like everybody listening should be grateful as well. Type 1 or even type 2 to an extent, because this could also pave the way if there aren't type 2 recommendations. That can be the next thing looked at. But I feel like it's very reflective of what you see. And hang on, there we go. Nailed it. So yeah, it's very reflective of what you see though, with just recommendations across, I feel like, nutrition and fitness as a whole, right? Like you go to your standard gym, you talk to a trainer and they're like, oh, I know nutrition, but there's diabetes. I can't talk about that because there's nothing that I know about that. Or, oh, I'm going to do exercise, but there's diabetes. So I feel like what you're doing is basically saying, hey, here's what the eventual recommendations will be. And it may not be as mainstream, but for people living with it, like us, or people that have a loved one with it, I think this is going to be a massively helpful resource to be able to say, this is the latest and greatest. This is what's going on. This is what to know going in. And, oh, it's been verified, as opposed to, here's what we've seen from thousands of people and it probably works, but it may or may not. This is, oh man, I'm so grateful for you. You have no idea. And I also have to know, burning question. You have a DEXA, like all the time access. Like you could go on it like every day. If you,
I technically could, like they did. I haven't done myself yet. Like I've never done a DEXA, but they said that I could use it, just to, it's there. And like, it's not being used because it's kind of just sitting there. Oh, if we use it like maybe once a week.
If someone doesn't know what a DEXA is, it's basically the gold standard for your body composition. So you go lay on this thing. It's kind of, I don't know, you describe it's not like an MRI. It's just like a table with like a little arm above you and it goes, or it scans your body.
It looks pretty sci-fi if you've seen like a medical bay on like a station or something, like those body standards. Yeah, with like, it's just a table, flat table. Then you have the arm that moves down, starts from your head, moves down to your feet. And then it's using x-rays to sort of x-rays and like pixel calculations to estimate your body fat percentage. And they also use it to track bone mineral density as well.
I was going to say the bone density one too is huge because I know a lot of people like I'll go on there. Okay, I want to know both for the reasons you mentioned, right? Because I know that, as people, just as we get older in general, bone mineral density has a chance to go down. So I'm always curious, but I'm just so amazed. I'm like, you have a DEXA you could use all the time. That's so cool. And then do you get to train in that? Do you get to train in the facility when there's nobody in there too?
I technically could, but we only have machines right now. So it's really like for my needs, like I'm doing like a power building program right now. So I just go to our university's gym, like a kinesiology building.
Well, and I'd be curious too, and I'm sure people listening might be curious, given you work in this field, you eat, sleep, breathe, live diabetes and resistance training. How do you personally train?
So right now I'm on a 4-day-a-week power building program. I don't know if you know Juggernaut.
Of course.
Training methods. Yeah. So it's Juggernaut AI. So I use that one, the app. It's really good for like auto regulation. I like it a lot. So it kind of like alternates upper lower right now, but it's also 4 days, kind of a little extra full body accessories sometimes. But yeah, it's hitting the big three. Yeah. So I've definitely been doing like powerlifting training probably for the last 15 years. It's mostly powerlifting. And then I also like kind of switched it up when I was playing football. And then, yeah, I did like a little bit of Olympic weightlifting. I did some stone lifting when I did the Denny Stones. I lifted the Denny Stones in the Highlands about 2 years ago.
Whoa. Can you describe that so others know? Because I can't, my face being going, whoa, is one thing, but you describing what you just did is going to make it.
So the Denny Stones are a historic set of stones that were used as like a counterbalance for stone bridge maintenance up in the Highlands of Scotland. And sort of like the legend goes that Donald Denny would just like pick them up and walk them across the bridge. And that is sort of like walking with them is sort of like the next step from just lifting them. I just lifted them. But the next step is walking with them. So the stones there's like a larger stone and a smaller stone and with rings attached. And the big one is about, I want to say 415 pounds. I mean, yeah.
I just found it. The large one's 414.5 pounds.
Yeah.
And the smaller one is only 318.5 pounds.
Yeah. So size difference is probably the most frustrating part of lifting them because you have the big one in front and using your dominant hand, and you have the smaller one behind you. You're doing like a straddle lift. Then you can also lift them side by side, which is a little more difficult. But yeah, I got into stones and I have like plate loadable pins, I guess you would call them. So you could just stack 45s on there, or you would need like 55s. Yeah, like kind of bring out of space. So I got to bring them to like a powerlifting gym and use the 25 kilo plates.
Holy cow. I'm just like, cause one of my friends has done lots of strongman stuff and he's not in the diabetes world. So he had me do just Atlas stones once years ago.
Okay.
I remember thinking, holy cow, this is so hard. And I was only doing like 160. And you're over here like, oh yeah, I just casually lifted, 14 pounds and then 318. I'm like, good God, man, that's insanity. But
it was a lot of fun. It was like, you have to like sign up with like this like cafe owns them. You have to sign up with them. You have to send them a video of you like rack pulling at least 660 pounds to prove that you're not going to hurt yourself. You have to sign like a liability waiver and everything. And like I think this max like 6 people at a time. They kind of do it like once a week over the summer. And like they film it all and like they have like judges and stuff. And yeah, they definitely like, they need to like certify it. Like it's a pretty big thing.
This is the first I've ever heard of it. And I'm just over here like, man, I out of the big 3, which I know you alluded to before, if someone's not sure, bench press, squat, deadlift is at least the big 3 that I know. I'm happy when I deadlift like 315. I'm like, I'm good. That's fine. And you're just like, no, I'm a casually deadlift, 700 pounds. No big deal. That's so wild. This is just so crazy. I had to ask about the lifting in the facility too. Cause I'm like, you're there. I'd be in there all the time, even machines, not whatever, DEXA, all the toys, bod pod. Have you ever done the hydrostatic weighing? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I did that in my undergrad. Like that's all we had. We didn't have a DEXA or anything. So we had the hydrostatic weighing where you have to like blow up all of the air in your lungs and like hold it for, I think it was like 10 seconds or something. Oh, it's the worst way to measure your body composition. It makes sense that DEXA is the quote unquote gold standard now because a hydrostatic weighing was just terrible. But yeah, I've only done that. I did that and we had like the bioelectrons testing.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, not great.
Yeah. No. So the thing, just for people listening, if you hold those things and hey, your body fat percentage is 22 or whatever, probably not the most accurate thing because it goes based off your hydration. So if you're dehydrated, it's not going to be accurate. Or if you're okay.
It's really only sending the signal. Like if you're using like the handheld one, it's just going just your upper body.
Right.
Like at the level of where you're holding it. As you're doing like the legs one, it's just going to the base of your spine and back. So you're just getting a lower body assessment. Yeah. So like it's just, and also, hydration just can really mess with it.
So just if you're someone who's doing that, just know it's a nice proxy. It's a general gist, but it's probably not going to be accurate. So find yourself a DEXA if you're someone who has diabetes and wants to learn about body comp. But no, man, we could be here for another hour. I'm so grateful that we got to chat about this. You got to go into the stuff you guys are studying. I'm very excited to hear about these details. And if people are listening and they want to know more about you and more about the studies that y'all are doing, or maybe even want to participate if they're local to you, like where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at St. John Science. It's like SAINT, John Science. And you can probably email or go to the IRCM website. It's like ircm.qc.ca. You can check out different studies there. And if you're in Canada, we have a nationwide diabetes registry called the Better Registry, also run through our research institute. So we have, how many people do we have now? We have a few thousand Canadians on that registry. It's sort of like answering a lot of surveys, and like sometimes they'll send you the pedometers to track your activity or tape measures to measure your waist circumference. And like they have random 24-hour dietary recalls and things like that. Yeah.
I was going to say, if you're in Canada, you better be hollering at this man. If you have diabetes and you're interested at all in anything related to exercise, but if not, also amazing resource. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for getting to have this chat. I will link all of the contact info in the show notes. So if people want to reach out, that they can. But yeah, only other thing that I have to ask you, because I ask every guest that's on here and that lives with diabetes, what is your most underrated blood sugar, factor that, affects your blood sugar? Like, for example, some people have said sleep. Some people have said hydration. What is your number one most underrated blood sugar impactor?
That's a good question. I'll probably say sleep as well. Like, I think it's my sleep is usually pretty terrible. So it definitely, when I get a good night's sleep, it definitely, you can really tell.
The insulin resistance is crazy. It's ironic too. I'm the one who said sleep initially, and you're the only other person that's agreed with me. And I'm just like, yes, the science agrees. But no, like I said before, I'm so grateful we got to chat. We'll definitely want to have you back on when you have a research update. And
yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much. And to anybody listening, if you are watching this and you enjoyed this episode, definitely reach out to Alex. And if you're loving the podcast, feel free to give us a 5-star on Spotify, Apple, wherever you are listening. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next episode.
Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.